Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dart, I am the IT Geek. So this is episode 2 in the Azure Identity and Access Management series. And before we dive into episode 2, I just want to give a quick recap on what we discussed on episode 1. So episode 1 was the introduction into Azure Identity and Access Management. So it was a very quick episode, very high level, and the first thing I kind of discussed was what exactly is Azure Identity and Access Management. What does it cover? I then went into some high-level information around how it works. And if you remember the diagram that I went through and that showed kind of the different flows, the different processes around it, and you know how it supports external identities, on-premises infrastructures, as well as third-party cloud applications. And then I touched on some of the different options you have around Azure and Access Management, and we talked about Azure AD, we talked about Azure AD Domain Services, and also Azure Hybrid. Again, it was very high level, didn't really go into much detail as there are going to be some more episodes within this series, including this one, which will cover all that in more detail. So now we've recapped episode 1, let's jump straight into episode 2. So quick introduction about what I'll be discussing. So this is the Azure AD episode. So this is the first part of that episode. Like I said, there's a lot of content to cover with Azure AD. So I wanted to try and split it over 2 episodes. So this episode will be more kind of theory, and episode 2 or episode 3 in this series, of the second part of Azure AD topic, will be more hands-on. So hopefully that'll be a bit more interesting. So I'll start off by explaining exactly what Azure AD is. So then what we'll do is we'll discuss around some use cases where Azure AD can be used and who uses it. I'll then describe the different types of licenses available with Azure AD and the benefits and drawbacks of each. Finally, I'll just touch on some of the Azure AD features, which we'll be doing more of a deep dive in part 2 of the Azure AD topic, which will obviously lead us nicely into that. So what is Azure AD, or Azure Active Directory? So Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management service, and it helps your employees sign in and access your resources within your infrastructure. And I use the word infrastructure rather than tenant because infrastructure covers your on-premises, it covers kind of your own applications, your third-party cloud applications, it covers all that. And Azure AD is what manages all that. As I mentioned, it allows users to access external and internal resources. So that includes Microsoft 365 services such as Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Microsoft Teams, as well as your more Azure infrastructure as a service type resources, like your virtual machines, like your Key Vault or an EV database as you posted in Azure. It also allows access to applications on your corporate network and your internet, along with any cloud apps developed by your own organization. And I refer back to the diagram which I kind of showed you in episode 1, which had all those areas kind of linked around Azure AD, and that's essentially the center of it. Azure AD is the center of all your infrastructure identity management. So Azure AD is subscription based, like most of Microsoft 365 and Azure, and you get the basic subscription with every user that gets assigned an AD account. Every AD account you create has by standard, by default, has a basic subscription. You then have 2 other additional subscription options which you can purchase and assign users. And again, we'll go into more detail later on in this episode around that. So who uses Azure AD? Let's go into some idea of the sort of people or the sort of employees that might use it. So we've got your IT admins, like I am myself, and I'm sure some people that are watching might be. So as an IT admin, you can use Azure AD to control access to your apps, to your app resources, based on your business requirements. For example, you can use Azure AD to require multi-factor authentication when accessing important organizational resources And again, refer back to my first series on MFA for some more information around that. Additionally, you can use Azure AD to automate user provisioning between your existing Windows Server AD tenant and your cloud applications, including Microsoft 365. So again, that's using the Azure AD Connect, which again we'll touch on later on in this series. Finally, Azure AD gives admins powerful tools to automatically help protect user identities and credentials and to meet your access governance requirements. And again, these are sort of tasks that an IT admin might do using Azure AD. App developers. So an app developer, you can use Azure AD as a standard-based approach for adding SSO using SAML, for example. You can allow it to work with your users' pre-existing credentials. So for an app developer, Azure AD also provides APIs that can help you build personalized app experiences using existing organizational data. So again, it's used by application developers or database developers in a lot of different use cases. So finally, as a subscriber, as a user, you're already using Azure AD when you if you have access to Microsoft 365 or Exchange Online. Each Microsoft 365, Office 365, Azure and Dynamics CRM online tenant is automatically an Azure AD tenant. So you can immediately start to manage access to your integrated cloud apps. So it's not just IT technical kind of techies that kind of use it. You've got standard users can also use Azure AD and benefit from this service. So what are the different Azure AD licenses? As I mentioned, Azure AD, there's a free directory license. So this is the basic license, and this comes with a default tenant without any additional subscriptions. So this has for a basic account, for a free account, it has a lot of features as well. So quickly just want to touch on those features. So if we just look at this table here, I won't go through all of them one by one, but just to have a quick summary that you can have up to 500,000 object limits, and that's quite a lot of objects in there. And objects don't not just user accounts; they include groups, devices, user accounts, security groups. So they include all that. But 500,000 is still quite a lot for a basic free account. You get single sign-on feature as well, which is really useful. You get sort of the device registration. So like I said, you can register your devices to Azure AD and manage and control your devices from that. You get self-service password reset, which is quite a useful tool, but the caveat is it's for cloud users only. You do get multi-factor authentication, but it's again caveated that you have to use security defaults for that. Again, if you go back to my multi-factor authentication series, you can see more information around that. And you get some basic security and usage reports. Again, these are very, very basic. There's not tons of detail in there. If you do want more granular reports, you have to go with a different license, which I'll be explaining shortly. So that's just covered the free kind of license that you get with Azure AD, the Azure AD basic license. So I'll now touch on the first license that actually costs you money. So Azure Active Directory Premium 1 or P1 is the first paid for license with Azure AD. So again, just want to cover this in a quick table. Again, whereas there was 500,000 limit objects with the basic license, the free version, there is no limits on objects. Have as many as you like. I said 500,000 is obviously a lot. An infinite amount is even more. So that's just another upgrade in the feature set. It obviously has all the same features as you get with Azure basic license. But again, as you can see, there are several other more advanced features that you get. Some of the differences, for example, device write back. So this can, if you register a device on the cloud, you can write that back to your on-premises directory. So it's got two-way sync. Company branding, which is a big one there, I feel, so you can put your custom logos of your business on your login pages, and which is quite helpful. Application proxy, which is a very good one for developers, but also for being able to have that additional security around your applications. I touched on reporting in the last slide. So again, advanced security and usage reports. This is more granular reporting, more advanced reporting. A few others I'll quickly just touch on. Dynamic groups. Again, this is, for me personally, this is quite a good feature that you get with Azure AD P1, and it allows you to have that more flexibility and control over your groups by having more of a dynamic configuration to them, rather than having to manually add objects to groups. You can configure them dynamically to meet a certain specification, and it adds that object into the group. Conditional access is huge. I think this is a very important part of security within Azure, which you don't get in the free version. So you have to have Azure AD P1 as a minimum to get conditional access based on group location and device data. So that's definitely a good feature for upgrading from the free version. And again, the multi-factor authentication, even though it's available in the free version, it doesn't have any conditional access integration until you get to P1. So again, another benefit, in my opinion, of having the paid version over the free version. And you've got some information protection integration there as well, which is really good. So we've covered Azure AD free license. We've covered the Azure AD Premium 1 license. So I just want to quickly cover the third one, which is Premium 2 or P2 license. And again, similar sort of table format here. As you can see, there's a lot less features in here, but it doesn't mean they're not any less important. So if we just have a quick look there, that there's no limit on objects, the same as Azure AD Premium 1, so there's no difference there. You get all the same features with Azure AD Premium 1, but the main massive benefit for me with this enhanced P2 license is the Privileged Identity Management, or PIM as it's known in short. And what Privileged Identity Management is it's a service in Azure Active Directory that enables you to manage, control and monitor access to important resources in your organization. These resources include within Azure AD, Azure, the infrastructure as a service, and other Microsoft online services such as Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Intune. So the Privileged Identity Management gives you even more granular control, reporting, alerting around your Azure AD identities. So it's a massive security increase, and a really good feature which I personally feel is definitely worth investing in, and makes the Azure AD Premium 2 a really good option. Other little bits are again risk-based conditional access policies, and you get even more granular sort of reporting and alerting around it, and access reviews as well, which are quite useful. Finally, we're going to have a quick look at what are the different Azure AD features. So it comes with a lot of great features. Some of them, authentication being one. So you can manage your Azure Active Directory self-service password resets. You can have multi-factor authentication, which we've mentioned a few times. Custom banned password list and smart lockout being some of the authentication features. Conditional access, where you can manage access to your cloud apps and create different policies around that. So you can apply those policies to different users depending on kind of the workload they deal with. You can have administrator level access policies, ones for admin staff, one for maybe your finance team need a specific conditional access policy. So you can have different policies depending on the workload. Hybrid identities is a really good feature. You can use Azure Active Directory Connect and Connect Health to provide a single user identity for authentication and authorization to all resources, regardless of the location. So it could be cloud or on premises. Identity protection. So I touched on privileged identity management in the last slide. That comes under kind of your identity protection. So with identity protection, it detects potential vulnerabilities affecting your organization's identities, allows you to configure policies to respond to suspicious actions, and then take the appropriate action to resolve them. So it allows you to remediate those vulnerabilities as well. Finally, reporting and monitoring is a great feature of Azure AD, a really important one as well. Allows you, you can gain insights into the security and usage patterns in your environment. Microsoft 365 Security Center is really good for this. The Security Center score as well, the security score is a great example of this. And again, I'll be showing more of that in part 2 of the Azure AD topic. So that brings an end to episode 2 of the Azure Identity and Access Management series. So this was part 1 of the Azure AD topic, where again it was very theory based, very high level. In episode 2 I'll be going into a lot more hands-on deep dive into the Azure portal, the Azure AD portal, so please do join me. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please like the video. If you've got any comments, again, please do leave me a comment, or you can hit me up on my Twitter or LinkedIn. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.